All right, and after a little bit of lagging, we are live. We are live. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. What's up, guys? Nick from P2W Fantasy here with Kevin. And Kevin, out of nowhere, it is October, and out of nowhere, we are heading into week 5. I think I've said this like several times this week, but I feel like everything's flying by. And Sundays have been coming super fast with a lot of variables and odd things that happen through the week. So, first and foremost, what's up with you, man? What's up with you? I was just ranting to Kevin before this about coaching and not having a good game today, so I'm done talking. I'm gonna let Kevin talk for a little bit here.
Yeah, I've had a shitty week. Just work, life, just everything. Fantasy went well, but you know how it is. I think that's one of the things. Social media is a cesspool. I'm kind of just over it. I'm getting a little angrier on someone messaged me the other day and it's like, hey, you're a little angrier. I'm just tired of bullshit. I think that's where I'm at. And you know what? I'm tired of Allen Robinson, Nick. I'm gonna be honest. We're gonna talk about
Oh
Allen Robinson
man,
later. He's
man,
killing me. He's killing me. So Allen Robinson's pissing me off. My wife is mad at me because she works and then I get the brunt of it. My kids are yelling at me. They love their grandma more. There's a lot of things going on right now in my life that
that's
it's just killing me.
that is very specific. I love my grandma more. That was
That's what
like
my
one of it's
that's
like
what
one of
my
the ones that are in the bag. Like somebody was holding on to that disc and we're just waiting for the right time to throw it out there.
my oldest daughter just said that to me before we came on here
Oh,
because she got mad at me because I made her eat dinner and she's like, I don't care. I love grandma more. I'm like, you know what? That's fine. That's her job. You're not supposed to love me like that.
she
You're supposed to. I'm your parent. All right. She's the grandma.
She may or may not have got you a little bit there, but
She
I mean,
did.
I don't. You kind of just
My
got to
kid.
take that one, I think. Um, God, that is funny. That is funny. So we're getting into week 5 here. Week 4, Kevin. We'll talk about two of our best calls instead of going through every single one of them and saying if we were way off or way on. Just to keep things brief, we'll go through our best calls from week 4. Then we'll go into our most impressive performance, a guy that we thought performed really well or just stood out to us in week 4. And then the big segment for today is breakup or stay. So we're talking about relationships with your fantasy players on your fantasy team. And we'll get into that in a second here. As always, this podcast is partnered up with the Fantasy Points Media Group. Go check out fantasypoints.com/subscribe. One-stop shop for literally everything. I'm on there every single day preparing for shows, my leagues, just looking up different things as far as advanced stats, reading articles. One-stop shop. Check it out. Use my promo code 21WIN10. And if you are tuning in, again, we got a good show today. I'm excited about this. Long weeks. The best thing to do is talk about some fantasy football, and we'll get to that in a second here.
I play to win, no fear to give. I feel but I can't forgive. I go all in this time, yeah, I won't regret. I'll pick the best on trip, they don't understand. I play to win, yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Oh, play to win, I play to win. Yeah, I play to win, I play to win.
All right, Kevin. So two of our best, I'll say two of our best picks or calls from last week. Kevin and I usually do a start of the week, somebody that we feel will be better, perform better than the consensus. So sometimes it seems obvious, sometimes not as much, but a guy we are higher on than where they're being ranked. So I'll say my best, Kevin's best, and then Kevin, give me any reaction to these two guys. So one of my calls was for the wide receiver position. I said Tyler Boyd, who ended up being the wide receiver 9 for the week. And then Kevin, you called Noah Fant, tight end 8 for the week, but had a good day. Had a good day. Anything stand out to you for either one of these guys for those calls?
No, I Tyler Boyd. I tweeted out like he's underrated, just like Brandon Cooks, as the other guys. Like Boyd is a legitimate wide receiver 3 flex option, and he's solid. I think he has a safe floor, and he has his games where he does what he did last week, and it helps your teams out. Like I love Boyd. He's always a late round target because his value is never equal to what his production is. It's always lower, and I love that because I can just draft him the 9th, 10th, 11th round. I like Fant. I think again, Fant scored that touchdown, which you'd like to see, and he had 10 targets. So to me, hey, his targets, that's the highest target all year. He's going to continue to get that. I think against Pittsburgh, we're going to see him do well. And he's just a solid tight end. He's top 10 tight end every week.
Yeah, with Boyd too, a lot of people were saying, of course, well, T. Higgins is out of the picture for that game. But if you look to the 2 games prior, 13.6 and 14.3, not, winning you your fantasy week, but if that's one of your flex positions, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. Did he have an elevated role in that game? Sure. I mean, he had 11 targets total. 2 weeks prior, though, he had 9. So it's not like it was the only reason for him to be useful for fantasy. So I'd say to the people that say these guys only perform when, X player is out of the mix, I mean, they got to make the plays. He's got to catch 9 balls like he did to go over 118 yards. And I think you just keep rolling with him as a flex. It's going to be an offense that has to pass the ball. Now they just lost their RB1, and I don't think they're going to use the new guy, Samaja. How do you say his first name? Something along those lines.
Perrine.
Yeah. The big waiver wire, one of the big waiver wire guys of the week. I don't think they're going to pound the rock with that guy. So they're going to pass the ball just as much, if not more, now without Mixon for however long he's out. And Fant, again, waiting on my boy Jerry Jeudy to come back. I think he's going to be very, very important to that offense. So both good calls.
That was a Looney Tunes voice right there. I just heard. There's that little that was a little Elmer Fudd, right? Yeah, a little bit.
Honestly, I just yelled for like 80 minutes straight in this game. So if I'm speaking English right now, as I take a couple sips of a Miller Lite, I'll take what I can get today. Week four. So those are 2 good calls from us, and hopefully we can get to at least one good call for this coming week. But who impressed you the most? So obviously, if you ask that question, people sometimes just look at whoever the highest scorer for the week was or something along those lines. And maybe it is for you, Kevin, but who comes to mind as somebody that stood out for that week 4 performance?
Yeah, you just kind of took a shot at my guy. But yeah, it's Debo. Okay, Debo Samuel. And to me, and for Debo, he hauled in 8 of 12 targets, had 156 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't know how you can't be happy with this guy based on his preseason ADP, what he's done. He's shot over that. He was the wide receiver 2, and he would have been wide receiver 1, but Tyreek Hill went, bananas, 47 points last week. But Debo had 35 in PPR formats. And when you look at his overall numbers, Debo is wide receiver 3 right now, right behind Kupp and Hill. So I don't know how you can't be excited about Debo, and especially where you got him at. And he looks like the alpha. And he's doing this all without being really on the run. Like everybody said, he's going to get those rushing attempts. He'll get those he'll get all those different types of, just the rushing attempts that you saw from him, those crosses, reverses, anything like that. He's not getting that this year. And so he's doing this all through the air. I love that. I love that it's going to be Lance now. Like, I think that's going to open it up if Lance gets the starting job. I don't know what's going on with Jimmy G. But again, I think that he's a solid wide receiver, and that's a league winner. We talk about league winners every year at the beginning of the year. Yep. Debo is a league winner based on value, where you got him, and on your roster.
And if we look at just what he's done so far, a lot of the knocks in the past have come and said that he can't stay healthy, and he, knock on wood, has been pretty healthy in these games. A lot of people were concerned with the target share because of George Kittle and because of Ayuk. But if you look, very consistent. He's got 2 games of 12 targets, a game of 8 and a game of 10.
Yeah.
And I found this cool little stat on ESPN. It says that Debo Samuel was the first 49ers player with 150 receiving yards and 2 scores in a game since Vernon Davis back in 2013. So this guy is absolutely lighting it up. And sometimes you'll have these player performances where one week it's super good. It's 20, 30 points. And then the next it's like 7, 8 or whatever the case is, like the Tyler Lockett's from last year and things like that. But this guy, he's been good. He's been solid. I mean, he doesn't score 30 a week, but 2 games of 30-plus points. That's winning you your fantasy week.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I mean, and you're doing that. So I think he's impressive. And he did it. I think he's the big reason why Kittle's not getting the work that we're used to. Kittle hasn't been good this year and in fantasy. And I think Debo's ascension, because Ayuk really wasn't there either, but I think Debo's ascension is going to limit Kittle a little bit, because Kittle was really the wide receiver / tight end 1 on that team. And now what we're starting to see is what happens when those targets aren't there. And he's not able to be efficient enough for that.
Yep. And I think we'll talk about another person in the Got people in the chat. Facebook chat pops up because I know StreamYard doesn't talk to Twitter right now. Week 5 is looking like Tom Brady winning again. All right, potentially. But we'll talk about another guy in the system very shortly within the show here. My guy to shift things over, DJ Moore. DJ Moore. We talk about Sam Darnold a lot. I know you and I love Sam Darnold, and we've been talking about him. But we got to talk a little bit more about DJ Moore. Mr. Consistency. 2 weeks in a row, 8 catches on 12 targets for over 100 receiving yards. Exactly 8 catches, exactly 12 targets. The big knock before for DJ Moore was the touchdowns, right? 2 in this last one. He scored 2 in this last one, 31.9 fantasy points, wide receiver 3 for the week. Looking at the season in itself, 4th in receiving yards, 4th in targets, tied for 2nd in receptions. He's got a 30.3% of his team's receptions, which is 7th overall for the wide receiver position. Wide receiver 4 right now. I'm sure we're going to see some weeks where he doesn't explode, but this guy has been awesome. He's been awesome. And that connection is one of the best right now in fantasy if you look at the numbers. I mean, numbers don't lie, fantasy points don't lie, and we talk about fantasy. That connection's awesome. Any thoughts on our DJ Moore here with our guy Sam Darnold?
Yeah, I love DJ
Look at
Moore.
Jacob coming in clutch here. Just came from Twitter since you can't see my comments. That's our guy right there, Jacob.
We know Jacob's old because he's got Facebook still. But yeah, so to me, I think that I think DJ Moore I love DJ Moore, man. And if they're targeting him like that in the red zone, that was the key. I mean, Teddy never did that. When you saw Teddy Bridgewater, we really struggled. Like, it was frustrating watching him. Darnold's good when he has time and he knows who he's got to get the ball to. The big loser is Robbie Anderson, and we'll talk about him a little bit. He's not looking good at all. But if DJ Moore can do this, again, he was a value, right? I think, people were really down on him. And I think that when we talked about him, I had him as my dynasty wide receiver 9, I think, going in the year or something like that. And I got some shit for that. And it's like, well, hey, if he has the quarterback and he has this touchdown volume, we're going to be fine here. And he's doing that. And if he can continue this, man, I love watching DJ Moore play. That dude's a man. Like, I love watching him play at the receiving position.
I mean, we saw him, 2 years ago, be pretty good for fantasy. He had that kind of iffy year last year because he wasn't, played as the wide receiver 1 in that system. But the guy was a first-round pick in the NFL. He came into the league super young. And we're seeing a guy that should be a lot higher in dynasty rankings. I think people are catching on for it. Going into this season, I forgot exactly where I had him, but I think I had him somewhere between 15 and 18, something like that. And I also got some shit about it. Like, hey, you're too high. Like, what do you see from him? And I think he's a good example of, if you truly believe in a player's talent, which personally I have, again, first round wide receiver. You saw some good things from him early on in his career. If you believe in the talent of a guy, sometimes it all just comes together for the situation they're in. So yeah, I'm big fan of DJ Moore and what he's doing right now. I just traded him away in a dynasty league, and I'm kind of kicking myself in the ass for it. It was a good return. I think I got Chubb and somebody else in the deal, and it was good return, but it brought a tear to my eye a little bit. We'll move forward here. So the big thing today. So you get in these relationships in life, not Kevin and I, who are both married. So we're not talking about our own personal relationships right now, but people in general. You get into these relationships in life, and sometimes things are rocky and you don't really know what to do. Sometimes you have to make that decision. Maybe when you're dating, when you're younger, should I break up with this person, or should I stay and just kind of hold on? So we can relate that to fantasy football, just because we're getting super creative this week. So how we relate that to fantasy, there's going to be players on your roster at this point. You're going into week 5. And you have to start making decisions regardless of your record. You're 4-0, you're 0-4, or anything in between. What do I do with this struggling player? Do I break up? So that means cut or trade. So that means you cut them to the waiver wire, or you try to trade them immediately. Or do I stay, which means just hold? I have to hold on to this player. So we'll go through a bunch of guys here, and we'll get our thoughts on some struggling guys. With the first guy being a player for my hometown team. Kevin mentioned him earlier, but Allen Robinson. So I'll just spit out a couple things, and then I'll ask Kevin, break up or stay. So Allen Robinson, week 1 was encouraging. He had 11 targets. That was good. That was a good sign. Even though it wasn't super productive, the targets looked nice. Bears, when controlling the game, though, or when they're in tight games, the passing volume's been kind of iffy. It's been low. He's got 3 straight games in a row under 4 catches. He has yet to score 10.5 fantasy points, which leaves Allen Robinson as the wide receiver 60 so far on the year. Big question, Kevin. Allen Robinson, break up or stay?
I'm staying. He's gonna hurt me more. I think I can't get out of this relationship yet. He's gonna keep hurting me. He's that guy that I think is gonna change, right? So that's where I'm at with him. I just think you have to, because at this point you can't trade him because his value's too low. I really don't think, unless what are you gonna get for him? To me, I saw him go for Tony Pollard in a league. I'm good.
Interesting.
I'll keep Allen Robinson because Tony Pollard, as a handcuff, is best still. Like, he's okay, but he's hit or miss. Like, I think with Fields getting the starting job today, like, you should be happy about that. We'll see if Nagy uses him in the right way. But when he gets the starting job, you have to wait, right? You have to see what they can do together, at least for another week or two. I know it's getting kind of close to that. Hey, I got to know if I'm competing or not. But to me, you can't leave him yet. You got to wait and hope that he had it. It did look encouraging that he was alive last week, and he kind of popped out of there. But I do know that the Fields-Mooney connection is a real thing. Like, those guys like each other. And I don't know if you saw the video. I saw some video that I was laughing at them, like, working out in the empty room together. They were stretching and doing yoga. Like, those two have a connection. And you saw it last week. So I do think that that's going to eat into targets a little bit. But they got to throw it to somebody. Like, it's Allen Robinson. You got to hold on to him. He's too good of a talent. I can't trade him for what you can. I'm not cutting his ass either. But so I'm staying and holding.
Kind of relates to DJ Moore's points from earlier. If you believe in, like Kevin does, the actual talent of Allen Robinson, you can't just cut ties so easily in Dynasty, for one. In redraft, I think that this team is going to start shaping things better around the quarterback that they have. And I think that hopefully they set him up to be more successful as a passer, and that he from that becomes more consistent. He definitely was unleashing Mooney, who's a vertical deep threat, which nobody in the past really could from there, from the Bears. But you're not gonna cut him, obviously. And I swear to God, if I see another person say to cut like a player that's rostered in 98% of leagues on Twitter again, I'm gonna lose my mind. Got Nate Williams. What's up, Nate? What's up, Nate?
Yes.
In the chat. But no, people you don't cut a guy like this. And what are you going to get for him for a trade right now? You don't want to sell somebody for the low, and then he goes back to his week 1 involvement on the team where he has 11 or 12 targets this week coming up, and then you just sold him for somebody off the waivers or something like that. So I'm with Kevin. You got to hold your decision based off of your team if you need to play him right now. I mean, it's been iffy. It just comes to your team makeup. I mean, if you are really wide receiver heavy and you have the luxury of benching him, then you do it. But otherwise, if you're putting in a guy who also hasn't scored a ton of fantasy points that you think has got a good ceiling, then it still might just be Robinson. Kevin, putting you on the spot here. This was an idea in my one home league fantasy league. Who would you rather have for Dynasty, Allen Robinson or James Robinson?
Allen Robinson.
All right.
All day.
All right.
But I'm not a James Robinson guy. So, like, I understand the James Robinson thing. Maybe in 1 year, if you're competing, I guess you could say James because of the running back landscape, what it's like right now. If you're talking about Dynasty and you want a long-term asset, give me Robinson, because he could go somewhere else next year. I know that's going to hurt your soul, but he could go somewhere else that's going to boost his value. So I'm going to take Robinson.
All right. So as a Bears fan, hopefully they sort things out, and I would like to see him be successful. But if he has a bad season, I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to move on. I think his connection and having a good year with Justin Fields was going to be a determinant of what he was going to actually do. So not too.
And I mean, and to your point, like when you're talking about like you don't just dump guys like this. You remember last year when someone was saying to dump Mike Evans after he had 2 points and then 5 points in weeks 6 and I think 5 or 6. And then Evans, after that, Evans had 16 points, 10, 19, 15, 20, 17, and 40 in week 16 in the championship game. You dumped Mike Evans, you just lost your league based on what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks of bad play? It happens with these guys, okay? Like they can pop off. Don't be that guy that dumps Mike Evans or Allen Robinson right now. You have to wait and be patient.
And on a quick side note, I will say, check every week, the morning of your waivers, when waivers get processed, most of the league just checks to see who was picked up, right? Who actually got Damian Williams and who got Jamison Crowder, all these guys. Pay attention to your league because a lot of people get dropped all the time that might be more valuable than the people that were actually on the waiver wire. You see that happen all the time. Everybody's so focused on these are the waiver moves that they make these mistakes in redraft, like Kevin's saying, that some people just drop guys that have no business being on waivers. So sometimes you actually luck out more from that than the actual waivers. Next guy used to have his jersey on the back wall, but just all over the place. And I got no jerseys on the back wall today. But Kyle Pitts. So far, tight end 19 right now. 12.3 was his highest scoring fantasy week. So far, he's got 0 touchdowns. The expectations, obviously, for Kyle Pitts were through the roof. Redraft, though, a lot of people are wondering, like, hey, I see these other tight ends performing. What do I do with Kyle Pitts? What's your suggestion here, Kevin?
Yeah, I was going through the numbers the other day. I was writing an article on Ridley. So I picked on Pitts. I was looking at him. Man, it is crazy who's ahead of him. Like Schultz, Knox, those are top 6 guys. Then you go down the list, you're like Jared Cook's back, Max Williams, Tyler Conklin. And then you're looking at, and Tyler Conklin, Max Williams, they were still on waivers. So you could have grabbed those guys and not used draft capital on Pitts, and you would have been probably sitting pretty heavy. I'm still holding on with Pitts. Like I'm still holding on, and the reason why is because those targets. I mean, he got 9 targets last game, so it's not like he's not getting the targets. That offense isn't great, and I don't think they're using him in the correct format. And he's really riding up at the wide receiver. I think he's riding most of his snaps at that position. So like I know that he's going to get the targets there, but he's got to be better. I think that he will. But I think that he's struggling like we all expected him to. Well, not all of us. The more rational group of people out there that thought, hey, he's going to take some time here to get involved. I think the real key is like, can he get more involved in that red zone? If he can get more involved in the red zone and get you touchdowns, that's great. But he still hasn't scored one. And he's playing the Jets. That should be an okay matchup. It should be okay. Miami, okay. Carolina, that's going to be a little tougher now. New Orleans, a little tougher. He's got a tough matchup. So you really got to see if that talent's there. I'm going to hold him, but I mean, I might not start him. I mean, the Jets, yes, I'll probably play them there. But if he doesn't do anything with the Jets, week 6, that bye, you might have to consider in redraft, obviously maybe thinking about getting rid of him or just holding them on your roster if you have a deeper bench. But if there's only 4 guys, I don't see how you can keep him. But I'm going to hold him for now. Just one more week. I'm going to pray that he does something.
I think this is a high expectation week. It's got to be. It's got to be. There's some encouraging things for him. I think some of this is off a player profiler, but number 3 in routes run, so that's good. He's out there running a lot of routes. Number 6 in tight end targets. And actually, you mentioned the red zone. He's either tied for second or he just is second for red zone targets, but they, like you said, have not amounted to anything. So some encouraging signs. I think Atlanta's been frustrating in general. I mean, if you are a big Calvin Ridley guy, I don't think you've been as happy as you thought. A lot of people, including myself, thought that he'd be around this time right now, like wide receiver 3 overall or 4. I think the expectation for him was high, and in Atlanta just is not really giving you what you want. Some of the questions I have for Kyle Pitts. Is there an issue with him catching his targets, or is it the quality of his targets? Because week 1, he went 4 for 8. So he only caught 50% of his targets. And then week 4, he went 4 for 9. So 4 catches on 9 targets. I don't know what's up with that. If it's a him thing, if it's a Matt Ryan thing, if it's a mixture, the yardage has to go up. The touchdowns have to go up. There's a lot of things that have to go up, but the big dilemma, and I think you were kind of getting at it too, is that in redraft, a lot of leagues, you don't have a deep bench.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying to cut him right now. I'm definitely not just saying cut Kyle Pitts. I'm not. But it's sometimes it's tough to roster 2 tight ends because usually you have your set one and then you stream one for a bye week, So it's I can get, there's another tight end we'll talk about more later, and then I got some guys that maybe roster, but I guess I'm just holding right now. I guess after the bye week, you got a big decision to make, though. I'm sure somebody will want him.
Yeah, I think the bye week is where the key is. I mean, in Dynasty though, so his value is still through the roof. What
absolutely. Yeah.
And a deal that I thought was interesting that he got traded for recently, it was Kyle Pitts and Brandon Ayuk. They paired those two, and for Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson. That is a deal, and you know what?
Yeah.
I think I'd lean Jefferson, right? You kind of have to.
Yes. So it was him and Ayuk for Jefferson and Hawkinson.
Yeah.
I'm taking Jefferson and Hawkinson without thinking twice, because let's say Kyle Pitts is highest. Say he's the dynasty tight end 1. What's Hawkinson? He's got to be in the top 5, right?
Top 5. Yeah.
What's the gap right now for dynasty between Jefferson and Ayuk?
It's pretty big. Yeah.
It's significant. Yeah.
Pretty big. Yeah. But that just shows you Kyle Pitts' value is still up there. I mean, and if you just go through it, I mean, he got traded for DK Metcalf and Trey Sermon recently, straight up. So Kyle Pitts for Metcalf and Sermon. Again, if I can get a wide receiver like Metcalf, Justin Jefferson, in those deals, and you can get something back, I don't hate moving Pitts. It just depends on what you think of Pitts and how value he is. His value is still through the roof, so you're not really selling low on a guy.
No. And two different things like we're getting at here: dynasty compared to redraft. But it's still a thinker, and people make a lot of reactionary decisions during this time. So dynasty, if somebody's, I would buy right now. If somebody is kind of iffy on his value, if you can send a guy that's been performing above expectation, that's not a household name, plus like a average wide receiver or something like that, that's young, I'd still make that deal. It really just depends on the league you are in. Next guy on the list, Robbie Anderson. So we talked about DJ Moore. We've talked about Sam Darnold plenty. Robbie Anderson on the year, wide receiver 70. Week 1, he had 12.7 fantasy points, and then all other weeks were under 10 points. He's had one game above 50 receiving yards only. So I will say this, a lot of people, and I think we've mentioned this before, a lot of people thought like he's back with Darnold. Like it was this big thing, like it was trying to, I'm trying to, Gronk back with Brady, or just like, I mean, two guys that were connected at the hip in the past, something like along those lines. Let's say if Kenny Galladay went to the Rams and I was back with Matt Stafford. I mean, people just had this weird vision that Robbie Anderson and Sam Darnold, I think, was going to be this awesome thing. And I wasn't really into it, because 2019, he was the second guy to Jameson Crowder. And then the year prior, Robbie Anderson was, in 2018, the man. But if you look at the list of wide receivers, Kevin and I were actually rostered on that team. So it's not like he had anybody to compete with. So Robbie Anderson, again, wide receiver 70. What are you doing with him? Are you breaking up with Robbie Anderson, or you staying?
Yeah, I sent him a breakup letter last week. He already knew. I got that breakup text. You know how old school, we used to actually break up in person when I was in school. Now it's all different. There's a whole different thing going on. Like, I just think for me in redraft, I'm out. Like, I just, I can't roster a guy like that that's getting, he has less points than Quez Watkins from Philadelphia. Like, Jeez. At a certain point, like, when you're looking at guys out there, Kendrick Bourne is 18 spots higher than Robbie Anderson right now. I understand the value and I understand it's there, but you can get other guys off the waiver wire. To me, especially the wide receiver position in redraft, I feel like it's pretty big. Like I feel like it's very there's a lot of guys there that you can interchangeable. For me, a running back's more important. Like if you need to drop him and pick up Damian Williams for a couple of games, I don't hate that. Alex Collins for a couple of games, depending on what's going on with Carson. Like if you did that, I don't hate that at all. As far as dynasty goes, I don't know what the hell you're going to do with him, because his value is pretty low right now. Yeah, he recently got traded for, Kadarius Toney and OJ Howard. I mean,
man,
that's a long fall from what happened this summer. And so to me, like, you got to hope in dynasty, maybe he has a couple good games, but there's a misnomer about that. I feel like in dynasty, the only time you can sell high when a guy has a couple good games is like week 11, 12, 13, 14, like in that prime run weeks. That's when you really can do buy high, like sell high or buy high articles. Like that's when it really matters. No one's buying Robbie Anderson right now. It's like the argument I saw someone tweet out, I don't know who did it. Like, oh, you got to sell Mike Williams at his price. Well, his price never has not. It's not market value. Like there's no such thing as that right now. It's too early. No one's gonna buy that. So like I think with Robbie, you got to wait. Hopefully he hits in that prime weeks 11, 12, 13, then sell him.
I think he's pushing. I don't even think you can flex him right now. I mean, the one nice thing last game was that he had 11 targets. Didn't really do much with them. Wasn't super fantasy relevant with it. But I'm not flexing him. him. There's I mean, you take a guy like who hasn't done anything in a while either, but you take a guy like Osborne on the Vikings, and he hasn't done much lately, but we've seen him have at least 2 really big weeks. So that's more encouraging than a guy who scored a ceiling of 12.7 fantasy points right now. And to me, I'm not a fan. I never was a fan. I respect what he did last year because he was good for fantasy last year. But this to me is the guy that you trade to push a trade that you want to make happen. So if me and Kevin are close on a trade, I'd be like, all right, Kevin, what if I add Robbie Anderson to the trade, hoping that he'll be like, all right, fine. If that's the one push, then we'll make this deal. That's what I'm doing with Robbie Anderson. I'm trying to make a trade happen, and when it's close, I'll be like, all right, I'll add Robbie Anderson to this trade. Again, mostly in redraft. He got extended too, didn't he? In the offseason, something like that.
Yeah, no, he got a 3-year deal. So, he's going to be there. It's just, what does that look like? I think that's the question.
I don't know. And watch Marshall continue to grow. I mean, he hasn't had consistency of like targets. I mean, I'm not even going to pull it up right now, and he hasn't popped off really in a given week, but that's my verdict. He's the pusher for a trade to get completed, Robbie Anderson, for me personally. Next guy is a Dallas Cowboy. I've seen plenty of tweets about this guy, so that's why I add him to this list, because if I was to just tweet this list out, I think some people would be like, why is this guy even on this list? But then there's other people in the community that have said, like, what do we do with him? What do we do with this guy? It's a long season, but it's been 4 weeks, which is the most crucial weeks of all time. So what do we do with this guy? But CeeDee Lamb, back-to-back weeks, under 10 points. He started the season with 15 and then 9 targets, and then he just totaled 8 total in the last 2 weeks. So 15, 9, and then across the last 2 weeks, only 8 combined. What are we doing with CeeDee Lamb? Are we breaking up with this guy, or are we staying with this guy?
Man, I can't break up with him. He's my guy. But I do think there's a shockingly reason for the volume concern, right? Like in the last 3 games, I think Dak's averaged 25 pass attempts per game, and he hasn't thrown more than 27. I think one thing that we've seen is like we thought Dak was going to throw the ball more than what he has, but he hasn't really had to because they've been very efficient. And when you watch him, they move up and down the field very quickly. And so they're not getting that volume that you think you want. So if he doesn't get targeted, that's a problem. And I think that's the key. Like Kellen Moore, and Kellen Moore's called 55 to 57% pass his first 2 years. So when we thought that's what it's going to be, it's gone down a little bit there. And so they're getting Zeke more involved. They're getting Tony Pollard more involved in that offense. There's a lot of mouths to feed. And with Dalton Schultz popping out of nowhere as a tight end 5, and Jarwin doing this, and Cedric Wilson, who I like, I think Cedric Wilson, is okay. Michael Gallup's not even there right now. He's injured. Mari Cooper's there. Like, I think one of the things about it is that we all thought Dallas's defense was going to suck. Well, Dallas's defense doesn't suck as much anymore. Like, they're actually creating turnovers and they're getting stops. And so that game script's not as what they've usually had in the past, and they're doing a pretty good job of the time of possession. So to me, I just think it's one of those things where Lamb's got to get the targets, and like you said, he hasn't been. And last week he had 5 targets. That's it. It was awful. He lost me the Scott Fish Bowl. I'd like you to know that, CD. I had a lot of faith in you, and I lost the Scott Fish Bowl because of you. But I'm back with you. I'm still with him. I think that his talent will win out. He's still wide receiver 28, which is not what he needs to be. He's got to get up there. He's got to get as a wide receiver 1 at some point, especially with the Justin Jefferson thing. But I can see it this week. The Giants are not good. We could realistically have it be there. So I'm holding on to him. You have to. Trade value wise, like in Dynasty, he actually just got traded for our guy, DeAndre Swift. Straight up.
Interesting.
Who would you rather have? Well, who would you rather have, DeAndre Swift or CD?
In Dynasty?
In Dynasty. Swift?
There's very few people that you can name right now that I would take above DeAndre Swift.
Okay.
I'm just being honest. Me personally. Even though he had a bad week, but I'm still taking Swift. You would take CeeDee Lamb?
No, I'd probably go Swift too, but that's just because I'm a Swift guy and the running back for me. I think he could be a top 3 dynasty running back, and you know what? CD hasn't proven that yet. So I think that question gets interesting if you put in like Justin Jefferson. But yeah, I'm holding on to CD. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, 23.4 week 1, 17.4 week 2. He can do it. It'll be interesting to see if Dallas runs their offense this way week to week, but I have a feeling that even when they play some teams that they probably should beat, I don't think every game is going to be as fully managed as it has been of late. Kevin gave you the average passes from Dak. He only attempted 22 last week, so that kind of paints the picture of what the offense was looking like at the time. You keep CeeDee Lamb. I think the talent's there. I think you still plug him in. You don't worry about benching him or something right now. If it's an every week sort of thing, then you start asking these questions. But again, I'll take this guy, his talent, and what we've seen the first 2 weeks to kind of balance out the rest of the season here. Amari Cooper is kind of banged up right now too. I don't know what's going on with him. He's got the rib and the hamstring. Speaking of you mentioned the defense. What's up with that cut? You like that cut that occurred?
Yes, that needed to happen last year. Jalen Smith is not good out there, guys. Like, if you're not a Dallas fan and don't watch it, he was one of the worst linebackers in terms of coverage, filling the gaps, filling the holes. Like, that needed to come. I love the kid. He's a nice kid. It seems like everything's there, but he just, with that knee injury, he can't do it. He just cannot stay with guys, and he's not a good linebacker. So I give him credit. I give the Cowboys credit for getting rid of him. We would have never done that years ago. It would have just been like, oh yeah, we'll let him go here. To me, I'm all aboard that train. That should have happened a few weeks ago.
And he didn't get picked up, right? He's still floating.
The Packers. I heard the Packers are looking at a finalized deal. The Packers, but that's good for you guys. Trust me, that's good. Trust me, that actually works out for you.
I got a soft spot for him. He's a Notre Dame guy, right?
Yeah, no, he would have been amazing if he didn't ever hurt that knee. I mean, that was a legit knee injury that he had. Like, that was like almost a career ender. So I give him credit for coming back, but he doesn't have the speed. He just can't fill the gap.
You said the Packers were looking at him?
The Packers, they said they finalized the deal tonight. They're going to finalize the deal, I guess. So.
All right, and speaking of the Packers, our next guy. Look at that transition. That's why I asked. I heard you the first time. The easy transition into the next guy here, Robert Tunian. Robert Tunian's our next guy, who was a stud last season, but right now tight end 29. He's had 1 week where he scored 14.2 fantasy points, and then he's had 3 weeks under 3 points, which is terrible, kills you. 7 targets last week, though, so maybe encouraging, maybe not. Redraft. What are you doing with this guy, Kevin? Robert Tunian.
I'm out. I'm gonna keep this very simple. It's Robert Tunian. I'm out. I'm done with you. I'm done. You're done hurting me forever. I'm out.
I'm with you. All these guys are rostered in under 50% of fantasy leagues. You mentioned Dalton Schultz earlier. He's been killing it. Max Williams, he's not killing it every single week, but the weeks where he gets volume from Kyler Murray, he does good. He does good for fantasy. And then Tyler Conklin, another guy who has some bigger weeks, kind of hit or miss as well, but they're all rostered in under 50% of leagues. I'm cutting ties. I'm dropping him. I'm not trading him. I'm not, stashing him. The thing I've liked about him in the past is like last season, he'd get 4 targets, he would catch 4 balls and sometimes score. He'd get 5 targets, he would catch all 5 and score. He was very efficient, but right now, nothing is pointing in the direction that, this is a guy that needs to be stashed right now. I know, again, last week he had 7 targets, but you look at a lot of these other guys, they're sitting on the waiver wire, and they are way more productive than him right now. Would you take all 3 of those guys before Tunian, Schultz, Williams, and Conklin?
Yeah, no, I would right now. I mean, there's nothing telling you that you should take Tunian, right? Like, and the targets is he did have, against Pittsburgh, he had more targets there, but it just, who's really killing him is freaking Randall Cobb. That I think, I think
huge week.
huge week, and he's taken away like that kind of. He's Rodgers' security blanket. Excuse me. If we're being honest, we know that about Rodgers. So I think he took that security blanket away. What Tunian was that, and I think that's the biggest killer of him.
Yeah, and he's a touchdown dependent guy right now. You need him to fall into the end zone. Last week, you just mentioned Cobb. Cobb had 6 targets, and yeah, you're right. He's across the middle of the field, and he was the guy that Rodgers went to in the end zone. It wasn't Robert Tunian getting the looks there. So I'm moving on. I think 4 or 5 weeks into the tight end position, I mean, unless it's like a top guy, top talented guy like Waller's having bad weeks, or Kittle's having these bad weeks, unless it's a guy like that the production's going to come, why wait? Why wait? Make the move for your fantasy team to get to put yourself into a better position. I mean, 3 weeks under 3 points, that kills you. You're hoping that somebody else in your fantasy team makes up 10, 15 points for what you are going to need in this matchup. So we're on the same page with Robert Tunian. Move on. We mentioned this guy, I think, before. Robert Woods, he scored last week in his highest fantasy outing, but his highest fantasy outing was 14.8 points, which is usable, but not what we've expected before the season started. The issues with Robert Woods has been him being a beta. Used to be one of the two between him and Cooper Kupp would be the 1A, and then the other guy would be the 1B. I said it last week, I'm pretty sure. Now it's Batman and Robin. You got the primary guy and then the sidekick. A lot of these weeks, his targets are well under Cooper Kupp's. I'm pretty sure Cooper Kupp twice, I think, the season has doubled Robert Woods' targets. This last game that he had a decent week, he had 6 targets. Kupp had 13. Also, Robert Woods, he's been above 48 yards 1 time. What are you doing with Robert Woods?
This is probably one of the hardest ones on this list when I was looking at it. And you're right. So like week 1, Kupp had 10 targets, Woods had 4. Week 2, they were pretty close, but Woods at 9 and Kupp had 11, but it wasn't like the production wasn't really there. But like you said, kind of his best week. He had a touchdown against Arizona, so that did help Robert Woods there. I know he had a rushing touchdown as well. Or no, he didn't. Excuse me. He had that receiving touchdown. I think the 1 yard. But again, yeah, Tampa Bay, 6 targets for Woods, 12 for Kupp. And like when you're looking at that really disappointing as a Woods owner if you have him. I don't have any Woods, so I don't have to deal with this. But if I had Woods, I think you have to keep him in redraft. I really do. I think that it's still that offense, and they're not running the ball as much, especially with the Akers injury and Henderson kind of being in and out. I know they did a little bit better last week. I still think they have a good schedule. I think the Seattle will be a telling game. They have the Giants, and then they have Detroit and Houston. So you're looking at 3 really bad teams. So when you look at that schedule, I just look at that schedule and say, you know what, he's going to do something there. He has to. If he's not doing that, then you might want to get rid of him and all the way around. As far as his dynasty value, it's all over the board, man. Like Tyler Lockett straight up, a first-round pick straight up, Tyson Williams and Cordell Patterson. That's disgusting, but that happened. So these are the things where he's at. So it really depends. I think he's the most league-dependent asset you have because you don't know what people are doing with him.
Here's a good question too for Robert Woods, and he was one of my guys before the season started. What Cooper Kupp is doing, I don't think I ever pictured either one of them doing for the season. I was well above with Robert Woods as far as ranking him above Cooper Kupp, not by like a crazy amount, but I was expecting him and Stafford to go off together. But here's an interesting guy in Van Jefferson. Do you think that I know we all talk about Stafford with Kupp and his impact being now a true alpha on this team and what that does to Robert Woods. Do we have any concern about Van Jefferson in this system? Because Van Jefferson, back-to-back weeks, has had 6 targets. This past week, he had 21 fantasy points because he scored on one of those 6 targets, and he had 90 receiving yards, which was, again, more than Robert Woods. Do you think he hurts him, or is it more of just the Kupp being the alpha?
I think it's Kupp being the alpha because when you look at the targets for Van Jefferson, yeah, he had that good game against Arizona, and he was efficient. But I think he's risky. I think Van Jefferson's really risky in terms of like flex play or whatever you're gonna do, especially with the ceiling that he has. or the floor, excuse me. Like I worry about that floor because you just don't know where it's going to bring you. I do think it will eat in a little bit. I do think there's something with Stafford and Woods though. Maybe there's just not that connection that they have yet, and they're still working through it. And that could be possible where you just have to say, you know what, something with Stafford, they're going to work through it. Bad teams help you work through stuff. So Seattle's pass defense isn't the greatest. So, I think the over-under on that is 53.5. I know it's a Thursday night game, but we could be looking at a high-scoring game. We can see that. We can see that coming out of there. Maybe it's a Stafford thing. Maybe they can work together and they'll get a little bit more targets in that area.
And McVay, I'm pretty sure, came out today and said we have to get Robert Woods more involved. But I'm with you. I think there's got to be something bigger to the picture because they've been successful in the past by overutilizing both of those guys, and just to see the big drop off in the separation between Kupp and Woods has been a little iffy.
Yes, it's weird.
The next guy on this list, this might be an easy one. But he was a waiver wire winner, a waiver wire hero, however you want to label the articles that come out. I think mine's waiver wire winners. But Tyson Williams, Latavius Murray, Lev Bell, Devonta Freeman. So Latavius Murray, Lev Bell, Devonta Freeman played, and he was a healthy scratch last game. Game prior, he only had 5 touches total after starting the fantasy season with 18.4 and 11.3 fantasy weeks. I'm going to keep it simple for myself. If he's a healthy scratch, I have zero interest in rostering him. I'm cutting ties. Do you think differently?
No, I'm out. I'm out on him. We'll keep it simple. As far as Dynasty, though, if you have him, you might be able to still maybe get a 3rd-round pick. Or one thing I did in a league that I'm competing in is I traded Williams and a late 3rd for a 2nd.
Interesting.
And that way I added my asset, whatever. You can have that late 3rd. Doesn't mean anything to me. And I got a 2nd for next year, which you never know. It could pop in or whatever, but you get a 2nd-round pick and that's trade too. You can use that pick for anything.
I like that strategy a lot, actually. I like that strategy of just finding a way to not just cut a guy, but to actually move up your draft picks. I think that's something that can be taken away from the show that I have not to say I haven't done something like that in the past, but it's not something I've preached a lot or actually thought too much into. But instead of just dropping just to drop, if you can find somebody who has the slightest bit of interest just to move up a draft pick, you'll be happier later down the road that you did that move. That's a good call there. Yeah. Next one on the list, super frustrating. Don't know what's going on with this one, but Miles Sanders, 9 carries the last 2 games, 10 touches last game, and 5 the week prior touches. Gainwell carried the ball 3 times and caught 6 passes for a huge fantasy week last week. This guy started the season with 74 rushing yards. Then every week for Miles Sanders, he declined in rushing yards. It's weird because I feel like you drafted him or expected him to be your RB2, or maybe if you had a good team, maybe you're like primary flex. Right now, he's a super risky flex. I don't know what's going on with Miles Sanders. I was listening to fantasy footballers. They were sold on the fact that they thought that the system just doesn't like him and the head coach just doesn't like him. What do you think about Miles Sanders? What do you do with this guy right now?
I'm out, bro. Like, I actually am out. Like, I last week I said, hey, bounce back week for Miles Sanders, and he let me down. I just don't know what the hell's happening. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't see what's going on there. And until that he proves to me that he can be or anything more than running back 3, I don't think I can put him in my roster. And I have him in Dynasty, and really I don't know. His Dynasty is about as low as you could get, to be honest with you. And it's getting to the point where if you can get a 1st-round pick from Miles Sanders, you do it. And I think that's kind of where his value is at right now. And that's what I would do.
I think it's going to be very dependent on what your team looks like. But if you have a sufficient amount of running backs that it doesn't destroy your team, the guy that just lost any combination of Cam Akers, Travis Etienne, David Montgomery's out for a couple weeks, Joe Mixon just got hurt. There's going to be managers in your league that are probably desperate for a running back right now. I'd start the conversation. I would because seeing Gainwell's involvement in the offense for the pass catching role and then having a running quarterback, I know sometimes it doesn't always kill him, but it snipes some of his upsides in the red zone and things like that. he's not being used. He's not being used. 9 carries the last 2 games. That does nothing for you. So that's what I would be doing. I'd be having the conversation with somebody in your dynasty league who needs a running back, or in your redraft league that needs a running back, and just trying to strengthen your team as best as possible right now. Simple.
Yeah.
Simple.
Simple. It's not hard, right? This isn't hard. But yeah, I would do that too. I'm out. Sanders, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what the hell is going on there. I believed in his talent ever since he's at Penn State, but he just doesn't. I don't know. I think he needs to change the scenery. I think he needs to go to a different team. I really do. Like, I would love to see him go to a different team, a different roster, and then use him in different ways.
Yeah, and it might end up being that, because right now it looks like he's just not important to the Eagles, which is unfortunate. Next guy on the list, I saw him throwing around on Twitter as a drop candidate. Juju Smith-Schuster, wide receiver 58. He's had 1 game above 9.8 fantasy points. Right now, as far as targets go for the season, he's behind Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris, Chase Claypool, despite playing 1 more game than both Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool. He's had games where he had 8, 7, and 8 targets. Again, I've seen people say that he should be dropped. And I'll just say briefly before we go to Kevin, he shouldn't be on waivers. I don't care. Personally, this is my personal opinion, so maybe Kevin's is different. Unless you play in a league that has like 2 or 3 roster spots for your bench, he doesn't need to be dropped to waivers. We talked before about how maybe you really want to get rid of him. He's that push in the trade that makes your trade work. Maybe he's that secondary piece that makes a trade work. But in no world do I see me dropping him to waivers unless I'm in a league, again, that has like 2 or 3 bench spots, because it doesn't make sense. If you play in a 10 or 12 person league, I don't think your league is that it's a necessity to drop Juju right now. And again, 8, 7, and 8 targets. I know Big Ben kind of is iffy right now. But some of those targets it's a good sign, I guess, because he's getting looks. But I don't know. Kevin, what do you think about this?
You're not cutting Juju in redraft. Like, you can't.
I saw that. I did, though. I did twice.
I know.
Twice. Not once, twice. Swear to God.
No, I know. I've saw it too. And I'm out. I'm not going to cut him there. And in Dynasty, I just wrote my Fantasy Pros article for this. And I said that he's a buy to me. I think he's a buy. He's a low buy, because I think he's going to move on next year. And listen, if Ben connects on like 2 of those balls that he threw out this weekend, we're talking about a whole different story about Juju. Like, he was open. I think he would have scored a touchdown, and he was open on another long pass. He would have been there. So he'll be fine. I think I question whether you can start him weekly in redraft, though. I do think that you have to really be patient there and know like the matchups and what does he have there. But I think in Dynasty, he's an easy hold, and he's a buy low to me. I just think because I like his ability and what he can do. And if he moves on next year, then we're talking about a whole new gang. I think he should have went to the Chiefs, though. But this is a deal. This is a deal I have for you that I want to know: Juju or OBJ Dynasty?
Juju, because of your point, because if he, again, young guy, we've seen him do things before. If he moves on to the right spot, he can be a guy that takes a massive jump for Dynasty.
Yeah. That's kind of where his value's at. So if you feel like you can get it, he also went for Trey Sermon and Jonnu Smith in a non-tight end premium league. That's freaking low, guys. Like, if you can get Juju where he's at, where value, he goes to another team next year, I'm all about that. So I'm holding him. Juju, you're my guy. You're a good dude too. So, you're my guy. I know fantasy points don't score good points for, paying for people's groceries, but you know what? I have a soft place in my heart for you.
And you know what? I doubt there's somebody on the waiver wire that is just such an immediate need that you need to drop whoever was your lowest ranked player, lowest projected player, and then also Juju. So I'm with you there. We got two left, and I'll put them together. And just give me any thoughts on keeping or cutting them. But I'm gonna just spit out. I used the Twista reference before, and I don't want to keep going old school on these guys, but I'll go fast here. Brandon Ayuk. He's had 0, 1.6, and 2.5 in 3 games this season. He had a 14.5 week, and that was it. Mohamed Sanu caught more passes on more targets last week than him. ESPN projects him to score 7.2 fantasy points this week, which might be generous. I don't know. And then Ronald Jones is the other guy. 21 carries to Fournette's 44 on the year. He's got 1 catch to Fournette's 15. He's never had more than 6 carries in a game. He's never had more than 9 fantasy points in a game. What do you think? Are you dropping both? Are you dropping neither? Any thoughts on these guys?
In redraft, I keep Brandon because I still think in that offense, Lance can kind of perform better. I'm out on Ronald Jones in redraft. I'm dropping him. I'm breaking up with him. I'm cutting him. Ronald. Hopefully you go somewhere else. Dynasty, I think I'm holding on to. Obviously, I'm holding on to both. You have to hold on to Rojo. No one wants his ass. And in Ayuk, you just gotta hold on that value there.
Dynasty for sure, holding on both, especially if Rojo ends up elsewhere. Never was a fan, and I got caught, last year because I said not nice things about Rojo, and I said he was not good, and he ended up being okay. But right now, he's like a handcuff. He's like a Alexander Madison. He's got to wait for somebody to get hurt for him to get his role back because he's not touching the ball. He's not touching the ball. Simple as that. Ayuk. For redraft, I think you're going to have to hope that Lance, once he starts, elevates his role. I mean, Darnell Mooney, you mentioned him earlier. Darnell Mooney with Justin Fields versus Andy Dalton, 2 completely different things. So could that be the same for Brandon Ayuk from Jimmy G to Trey Lance? Maybe. So then I would just hold in that case. If Trey Lance plays 2 weeks and Ayuk is still scoring like he is right now, then I think it's a cut. But you have to see whenever a quarterback change happens, what's it look like afterwards, because people are connected in different ways. Teddy Bridgewater, his connection to DJ Moore last year is far different than Sam Darnold's connection to DJ Moore, like we said before. It's funny how we can just start tying everything together here.
Yeah.
Everything together. We got a few minutes left before the hour mark, and we like to kick it off. Oh, one more. I have to say this one. I'll be honest. I liked him in college. And I don't like him in the NFL. I think I won't even get into it. Baker Mayfield, he's QB 25 right now. He's floated between 9 and 17 fantasy points this season. He's got a 14.1 average fantasy scoring per week. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in 4 games. He's 56.8% rostered, which is higher than Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, Jared Goff, Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston, guys like that. What do you think about Baker? Let's say just for redraft.
Yeah, so I don't know how you can really keep him for redraft. You know what I mean? Like I'm out on that because where his numbers at. Baker's always been the type of quarterback that's a pretty good football player and a good NFL quarterback, in my opinion. Like, he can lead a team. He'll never be like that elevated team, but he can be a very, very solid NFL quarterback. He's always had limited upside for fantasy, especially in Stefanski's offense, right? Like, it doesn't work. So to me, in redraft, I'm okay dropping Baker. I really am. Like, I mean, personally, if you can get any of these other guys, like if Trey Lance was on your waiver wire, guys like that maybe could pop up.
Yeah.
Even Taylor Heineke's having a better year than him. Like, Heineke's QB 15. So, like, I think in redraft, yeah, to me, Baker's always been a very good quarterback, just not necessarily a good fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, there's too many players that are above him in fantasy scoring that are rostered well below his 56.8% rostership on ESPN right now. And again, QB 25, if you play in a 1 quarterback league with 12 people, he's not a guy that needs to be rostered. If you play in a 10-person league with 1 quarterback, he doesn't need to be rostered either, because you'd say the top 20 need to be. The top 24, he's just outside of both. I don't have interest. He's not going to be the reason that this team is successful. It's just simple as that. He's going to facilitate. It's going to be the running backs. Last thing here, Kevin, and you can just fly through it if you want. If you want to take your time, take your time. I don't care. We usually go through a bunch of starts of the week, but I felt it was necessary to go through a long list of breakup or stay, because we have to make a lot of roster decisions at this point of the year, especially if you are struggling a bit or you want to take the edge in your fantasy redraft league. But who's the guy, Kevin, that you feel is a great start for this week? It can be in any position. It can be a flex play. You're just above this player in comparison to the consensus. Who comes to mind?
Yeah, this week for me, I'm going to keep it easy. Aaron Jones plays Cincinnati. I think that he's a smash guy. I know he has a little ankle thing going on, but he said he's probably healthy. So to me, I think, he always does well coming off like a down week, and he kind of had a down week against Pittsburgh. So I can see him just smashing Cincy. Look what James Robinson did to Cincy's defense. Aaron Jones is a much more talented player. I think he's a smash. Obviously, he's a start, but I think he's going to have a great week. He could finish at running back 1. That's how high I have him this year, or this week, excuse me.
I'm in total agreement. Aaron Jones was a guy I had well above the consensus. I thought I got crazy with my ranking for him. The guy scored 41.5 against Detroit in week 2. Might be another one of those weeks where he just puts like a 30 piece on Cincinnati here for fantasy. So I'm completely in agreement there with you. Mine's not super sexy. I'm going to say start this guy in the flex. And I've boosted him before, but Leonard Fournette. So the Dolphins are giving up the 4th most fantasy points, average fantasy points to running backs per game. Week 1, Damian Harris, 100 rushing yards. Week 2, Moss and Singletary combined for 32.5 fantasy weeks points. It's getting towards the end of the show here. Week 3, Peyton Barber had 111 rushing yards and 23.2 fantasy points. And then just this last week, Jonathan Taylor had 103 rushing yards and 20.4 fantasy points. Leonard Fournette is the lead back in the system now. 23 touches total last week versus New England. He caught 3+ catches in all of his games this season. I think, not hot take, maybe it's a hot take. I think Lombardi Lenny scores a touchdown, has 3 or 4 catches, and gets plenty of touches this week versus Miami, and I think he's a good flex play. So put him into your flex position, Leonard Fournette, for this week while he's the lead back.
Yeah, I guess. Did you just call him Lombardi Lenny? Is that what you just said? Lombardi Lenny?
That's what me and his homeboys call him, because I'm one of them. I'm one of them.
Yeah, he's all right. I don't know. If he does well this week, like you said, you have good points there. I think Rojo's a better back than he is. I truly do, but obviously I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, because Bruce Arians is a Super Bowl winning coach. So if they're giving him the ball, he's getting the volume. What the hell? At a certain point, and they are going to lead him on a little bit, I think, especially after that Rams debacle last week. So I beat it 2 weeks ago, and then they didn't play that great, obviously against the Patriots. So I give you credit there. I think he could pop, but I can't. Lombardi Lenny, I don't know if I can take you that serious.
Lombardi Lenny. I forgot what he was before. He was something else before that, and then he became the next thing, and I don't know. Again, that's what me and his homeboys call him. That'll wrap things up here for today. Obviously, week 5 is very close, as we have a game tomorrow, which will be an interesting one. Probably a little bit better of a game than the last 2 weeks, but I'm not going to complain about football ever. Kevin, as always, thank you for hopping on. We do the show, me and Kevin, weekly, every Wednesday, talking about the previous week, the week ahead. We got a good show together here. Kevin, anything you want to plug before we close things up that you have coming up this week, next week, whenever?
Yeah, no, I got nothing, Nick. I pretty much don't do anything. I'm just here for engagement. All I ever do is just tweet stupid shit. That's I guess what they tell me. No, I have articles coming out this week. You can find me at Triple Play, me and Jacob's podcast, and then obviously all my Debbie stuff. So you can find me there. And every Friday morning, I do a little college football preview in my classroom at 8 a.m. in the morning, or 11 a.m. Eastern. So nice. you can catch it there.
I'm the same, man. I don't tweet for engagement. I just post like fantasy fit club videos usually in the morning. There's like 2 of us still standing, I think, with that. So you can catch that. You can catch probably some pictures of Mila and something about, complaining about high school soccer along those lines. And then maybe on Sunday I'll be on the Fantasy Points show. But outside of that, just count on those other things. So thank you guys so much. If you watched live, if you watched or listened on iTunes, Spotify, any of those, be sure to follow Kevin. Kevin's at Daboys, DABOYS_22. And you can find me at P2W Fantasy. We're super active and we're plugging a bunch of stuff throughout the entire week. So definitely check out us on social media, and good luck in your week 5 matchups.
See you guys.